Hello and welcome back to LDC FM. You're tuning into our podcast featuring interviews with our community of independent designers and industry guests. We'll be discussing topics of sustainability, conscious design, the future of fashion, tech, and innovation. This podcast has been recorded alongside an Instagram Live, so apologies for any technical issues prior to tuning in. Thank you for listening. Hi guys, it's Nikki, the Marketing and Social Media Manager for LDC. Welcome back for another Friday session with myself. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I've got a very, very special guest. It's Elle Ward.
Hello, thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you doing?
Good. I feel like there's some good connection vibes going on here because you're very clear.
Let's hope so.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's been a busy week, but pleased that it's kind of sunny and just trying to make sure that, I schedule in my daily walks. Never have I walked so much in my life, and I hope to continue this when we're allowed fully back out again. What about you?
Yeah. Absolute natural athlete now, I can tell you. But yeah, introduce yourself and a bit more about what CoGo is and what you also do as a sustainable brand consultant.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm Elle and I am the UK Market Manager at CoGo, an app that helps connect consumer spending with ethical and sustainable businesses, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. But I really got into sustainability via the route of fashion back at uni. So I was at uni, we were all meant to be broke, we're broke, but yet we could get ASOS orders through the door 3 times a week. And if we didn't like it, we'd send it back and it probably would never go back on the shelves, most definitely didn't. Or it was so cheap that we would just forget about it and it would accumulate in our wardrobe. So I set up a kind of charity shop to really challenge the notion of buying secondhand. Didn't have to be boring, it could be really exciting. So I set that up while I was at Manchester, and it got a really great response, particularly from women who, really wanted it and really engaged with it. So that really made me realize how important sustainability was. And I went on, as many people do, graduated, got any job I could find, and became really interested kind of again in it. And I set up a page called Sustainable Hustle just to hold myself account. I really wanted to be more sustainable and ethical, but I felt like at the time you couldn't simply Google how do I be more sustainable in fashion and you'd be given the answer. Yeah. Or if you did via brands, the things that would come up even like 6 years ago was like your typical kind of hemp coloured clothing or an organic white cotton t-shirt. Yeah. That was like £200, and I was like, I want to be more sustainable and I want to support designers, and I know I need to spend a bit more, but I don't want to spend X amounts, and secondhand is important, but the odd thing here and there. And basically set it up because I didn't want to compromise my style, but wanted a bit more than hemp trousers and to find some cool things. So I just did it to kind of hold myself account, and through that met so many amazing designers, developed really good relationships. And then, what was once maybe one Google alert a day, I had it all set up on my phone like 6 years ago about sustainable fashion. It was featured in some back-end magazine somewhere. It just started coming through, I think, in the past 3 years. So I kind of really built up a network and a lot of knowledge, having had nothing out there at the time to find as a resource. So started working with various businesses to help get them into sustainability. So I worked with a lot of shops to connect them with all these brilliant designers that I'd met to stock in their stores, and also did a lot of event creation as well. I was really passionate about making sure that sustainability conversations were accessible, because that's what I felt was really lost. It was all in kind of wild terms on the back pages of people's websites. And then I came to work for CoGo last year, and it was perfect because it almost answered this question that I had 6 years ago when I was on my journey. And again, I loved what they were doing. I loved how accessible it was and that it expanded beyond fashion as well.
Great. I feel like we're very similar in the way that we came from quite a personal background and attitude towards fashion, which always usually starts off as being fast fashion, and then you kind of grow into this like you start working in fashion or doing things fashion related, and then you realize you see a bit of the ugly side, and then
For sure.
people just turn towards sustainability, and it's just opened up a completely different world for me, and I'm sure for you, and like the community, especially in London, but globally, is just really growing, and it's really getting some momentum, which is amazing. And going back to CoGo, tell us a bit about it. Like, when did it start? So you joined last year. Tell us when it started and just a bit more about what it is.
Yeah, so CoGo's history is actually really exciting. So our founder, Ben, actually worked for the UN. He worked for the New Zealand Treasury. So, had dedicated many years of his working life to working in policy and so on to help more ethics and laws passed for both people and the planet. But, as we all do, we'd love for politics to be changed. We'd love for there to be more legislation. But sadly, we all know that politics is so slow and takes a long time, and obviously is still crucial and still there. So born of that, out of that, he set up CoGo, which at the time was called Conscious Consumers, but we changed the name because nobody could spell conscious. So yeah, on his weekends, he set up the business with his friend who he'd studied with at university, and they would literally go around to cafes in New Zealand and, stick stickers on cafe windows and be like, these guys are organic, they serve vegan options, shop here. And so the idea was born that actually let's empower consumers to make that change. Voting with your money on mass scale can really drive the future and really show businesses and governments the need to change, because that consumer want and need is there. So yeah, then set up in New Zealand full time. The company grew, and then nearly about kind of 2 years ago, coming up in September time, it came over to the UK. And the reason we came over to the UK was because we wanted to take this idea of consumer spend to the next level. And the UK, the whole of the EU at the time, had something called open banking technology, which was just starting. So open banking technology allows you as a customer of your bank to consent via approved third parties who are approved by a government organisation called Financial Conduct Authority to consent to give your data. And it can be really helpful for stuff like getting a mortgage, or if you want to round up your spend, there's some great apps called Plum. So say, for example, you spend 98p on a coffee, they'll round it up, and that's all via consenting to look at your data. But we're using it in a very unique way. We're using it to see where you're spending and then helping you spend with our businesses who we've accredited. So for example, the wonderful Loan Design Club is listed, and we can see that you're going to Topshop on a Thursday night, and actually why not switch your spending to Loan Design Club, because they do X, Y and Z. They host all these amazing sustainable events and have these designers, and then when you go out on that Friday night in that dress you've got from Loan Design Club, why not go to a pub that pays their staff the living wage and so on. So that's how it was all born.
That's an incredible, great story. And does CoGo stand for anything?
Yep, so CoGo stands for Connecting Good. So again, going back to our original ask, that we want people to connect with good businesses and also connect with each other to start a movement.
Great. And working in tech alongside a lot of sustainable local brands, what shifts and adjustments are you seeing brands make towards technology, especially in the current COVID situation?
Yeah, so I think at the moment what we're really seeing is going back to basics with tech. So before this all started, there was so much investment and conversation and looking towards tech of the future and what was going to be reimagined and super futuristic. But I think what the past kind of few months has taught us is actually at the heart of what we need consumers to gain is food, is resources, no matter where you are in the world. So a lot of the kind of attention and what's being pumped into at the moment is kind of online delivery and logistics that seems so mundane, but is at the heartbeat of business to get things from A to B. So that's a really interesting place at the moment. I think in fashion, there's some really exciting things as well that are happening that have been forced by everything, which is obviously kind of a wider devastating effect. So I think we already saw with like Paris and Milan Fashion Week, as it was kind of just on the cusp and coming to Europe, actually, you know, 3D in fashion has been something that's been called for a while. Why do we need people to fly around the world 4 times a year to various countries with a full buying team? You know, we're not saying to eradicate Fashion Week, because there's definitely a lot of worth there, but actually, do they need to go and see that garment, or actually can they have the same experience via 3D, via some amazing third parties who are allowing that to happen online? So I think that's something good that has risen in the past few weeks, and we see a lot more of that as people realize that we don't need to do a lot of things face to face. There's some things we definitely still need it there. There's a balance. I don't think we can eradicate it, but it's that fine balance I think we're learning.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with so much talk about fashion technology and where it's going right now, and especially with just getting out of Fashion Week alive in February, and just sort of seeing that sort of change. Like, what we're talking about now, are we actually going to see that in June when we have London Fashion Week again? Will that come? Will we see those changes that everyone's talking about now, which is really exciting? And I think what's awesome from this really devastating situation is the fact that technology, everyone's accelerating in a way. Like, sustainability feels like it's accelerating, and people are going digital, so people are sort of don't really have any other choice but to go digital, which becomes sustainable in a way, because it's maybe that designers need to create their collections digitally and learn how to do that now. And will we have the fashion runways that are digital, which is actually quite exciting.
Completely.
So my next question, in regards to fashion tech, what type of innovation forecasts have been emerging recently that might help independent designers become more sustainable? Have you seen any materials or other platforms perhaps?
Completely. So I think material science is fascinating. Like, when I was doing science at school, if I'd have known that material and science could have related to fashion, I may have been more engaged. But I think it's a really interesting industry to look to at the moment, the innovations that are happening there, because it really strips back one of the main issues that we have with fashion, which is production, you know, materials, the amount of dye and water that it takes to make a pair of jeans, the degradation on the environment to even get that said material. So looking to alternatives there is really interesting. So with leather, we're seeing some super interesting things: apple leather, pineapple leather, but what's really interesting is that a lot of fashion is looking to what the food industry is doing. So Beyond Meat, which people have gone absolutely wild for, and a few other of these kind of fake meat brands that are rising and have huge amounts of investment and attention, is really interesting to look to. They're doing a lot to genetically modify what's existing, so a hamburger to a vegan burger, and a lot of that's happening in fashion as well. So there's a real trade-off at the moment. Although I mentioned there's pineapple and apple leather, there's still kind of a lot of work to be done there in developing the material fully. But if you want to get a vegan leather item, traditionally that material is made with a lot of PVC. It's not the best for the environment, although it's great that obviously it's cruelty free. It's got other issues as well. So there's a lot of people working at the moment to genetically modify the pre-existing kind of molecules and material science that makes up leather into a vegan leather. So it's, you know, a direct replica, which again fuels consumer demand, makes it easy for people to make the right choice because they're not having to sacrifice, and you know, is good for the environment and eradicating those challenges with PVC. I think a really great company to look to, which goes back to talking about 3D at Fashion Week, is Unmade, which again is actually quite a simple technological idea and practice. So obviously at the moment, when designers make things, they design it, they make it, they sell it. Unmade have done something so simple, which questions as to how we got to this place. They are designing it, selling it, then making it, which is like, of course, why did that not exist already? The biggest issues we have is with surplus. And although there are some great designers who are using that and weaving that into their product and using dead stock, you know, it shouldn't exist in the first place. So they're using some amazing technologies for designers, both small and big, to log on and create and have a great experience in creating product, in showing that to a consumer, which allows people to see something digitally before they buy, thus, you know, stopping excess surplus. So I think that's a really exciting one to look to. Obviously, rental is really exciting as well. Last year it was kind of just on the cusp and is now booming. I was speaking to a really great business this morning, Loanhood, who are doing rental but focusing on making it really accessible. And although people may think, oh, how does tech relate to, you know, rental and clothes sharing? They are absolute operation lines. You're practically doing a, you know, UPS service. They rely so much on data and tech. And that's a really interesting part of the fashion industry. And I really hope with everything that's happening, obviously, naturally, rental is down. People aren't going out as much, buying as many clothes, that is something that's still kind of rises and remains at peak at the end of this. So yeah, those I'd say are my top 3 at the moment.
Cool. And do you find that there was any sustainable tech that that people were really looking at before the pandemic that, I don't know, maybe is still relevant now or not at all? What was quite, do you know anything that was quite popular that you could share?
Yeah, so I think there were a lot of questions around things that were face to face. So again, going back to the fashion week conversation, people being like, no, absolutely not. You need to see a person for that, or you need to see said item. And there's some really interesting stuff happening in the mental health space. So we already saw Headspace on the rise. And, you know, previously everybody would have been like, an app for mental health and well-being. Come on, you know, you need to see a registered therapist. But actually it's understanding that it's about prevention rather than cure, and it's about well-being every day. So there's a really great company who are with us as part of the Google for Startups incubator called Spill, and they do some amazing work with inbuilt mental well-being into employees' Slack, so people can ask questions throughout the day. Obviously, if it gets to a certain place in the conversation, they can be referred to a therapist. But that is being propelled even further as more people are working from home and looking after employee well-being. So it's exciting to see that happen. There's also a really amazing CoGo listed company called Oddbox. Some of you may know it, and essentially they take surplus fruit and veg that is disregarded from supermarkets for not fitting the kind of conformance of what nice veg should look like. So you get all this excess, which is ridiculous and terrible and a huge
funny
issue.
Looking pieces of
yeah.
fruit and vegetables.
So they basically sell on wonky veg and fruit and veg boxes, and at the moment nobody is really investing in anything really. You know, if you're a venture capitalist, you're going to be very than ever with your money. But actually, amazingly, they've just received 2 million in funding, which is so exciting to fulfill the logistics and tech side of getting it out.
It's quite interesting, the fact that, you know, what you're talking about, mental health, like they're creating, you think like, why would people turn towards technology when, you know, it can cause anxiety and mental health and that sort of stuff. But people are seeing that opportunity to take technology and use it for such a good choice, because like fashion, everyone's going to buy tech, everyone's going to buy fashion. And, you know, I think it's up to a lot of people to work out how to change that really, and not turn away from it, like face it, and also make customers understand how to use it for good. And I feel like that is quite challenging. So I just wanted to ask you, with CoGo, or yourself in your experience with sustainability, like what are the challenges that you face when it comes to customers trying to educate them on like shopping and living more sustainably?
Completely. So first and foremost, CoGo is tackling 2 very important and big issues: technology for good and sustainability. And a lot of what we're doing is, you know, speaking to consumers really accessibly. We're not after the consumers who, you know, are climate warriors, have been since the 80s. Like, that's amazing, they're doing great, they don't need us. We really care about the people who are on their journey, who are starting to get there. So I think for us the biggest challenge is making sure that we're super accessible in what we're doing, and educating people about our technology and how with us they can really use their spending data for good. You know, educating people that banks for years and years have been using your data, not doing much with it or selling it on, and actually, you know, be an independent person and allow us to help you make your spending as valuable as possible. I think with businesses, what we see is some of the smaller businesses who are doing amazing stuff but can't afford to get the accreditations. So we speak to businesses all the time, and obviously we accredit businesses to be on our app, and we're super thorough with that, and that will be something that tech can never replace. It needs to be a thorough process, but we see so many small businesses missing out because they can't afford the organic accreditation and whatnot, even though we know that there's probably 2 people working in that business who know from start to finish the production line, they're paying their staff fairly, they do everything in their power. So I think that's definitely a challenge, and I would love to see more support from organisations to waive the fees for smaller businesses would be great.
I think from like my perspective as a CoGo user, the great thing about it is that it is really embedded in your daily lifestyle. So it's like replacing, I feel like with sustainability, what I found when I've transitioned with like lifestyle is that not to be freaked out by everything, and just to take little bits of your life and change that one little thing at a time. You don't have to go all out at once. But having that app and being able to just, you know, instead of looking on, I don't know, another publication website or whatnot, of like things to do around the place, it just replaces that, and it just opens a whole library of all these really interesting things that you might not have come across. Like we were talking about, sustainability has just opened a door to a whole new world of opportunities as a consumer, and it's really great to see that. And what I also wanted to ask you finally was, how do you keep up to date with all this news about technology and fashion and small businesses? What's your go-to?
Yeah, so definitely interesting conversation about news, because I've been so conscious the past few weeks to like turn off from quite a lot of news. I digest enough to be knowledgeable, but it can be so overwhelming. But a few publications that I love is the Business of Fashion, BFO. They do a lot of paid for content. The membership's quite expensive, but you can get their daily digest email for free. And there's also some really good Spotify podcasts. And I love Business of Fashion because, you know, for so long when I tell people, oh, I want to go into fashion and sustainability, everyone's like, oh, why would you do that? You know, the fashion industry, it's just a bunch of people running around and going to parties. Whereas actually they relate a lot of current affairs to fashion because it's all interwebbed. It's so political, it's so current and so social. So that's a publication I really love. And although it's industry focused, the language is really accessible. From the tech side, I love TechCrunch as well. They do a daily digest of a kind of breakdown of who's doing what innovations are happening. There's a lot going on at the moment of things that are being sped up in light of Corona, so they're really good. And then also Common Objective is a really amazing publication tool. If you're interested in kind of getting started learning, their stuff is super digestible. And then the last thing I would say is, and I know at the moment it's very overwhelming because every time you log on to LinkedIn, Facebook or Instagram, somebody's doing this, that, and the other course, or learning a new language, learning to juggle, whatever. But Future eLearning is an amazing resource of free online courses with everything you can think of. And it's all run by universities. So there's a great one at the moment, which is run by London College of Fashion, which is an introduction to sustainability in fashion. So I definitely think that if you're going to do anything and you're interested, that's something worthwhile checking out.
Well, I know what I'll be doing this weekend, checking out CoGo. And just before we leave, we've got a question from Fashion Factory. Can a manufacturer be on CoGo?
So at the moment we are to consumer, so consumer has to be able to purchase it. But what we'd love to explore, and we've got a complete open door policy, is that maybe there are some businesses as a manufacturer that you supply to who you think are doing great work, and we could work with you to ensure that they're highlighted via you as a manufacturer. If you are ethical and sustainable, we'd love to invite you to have a conversation.
Great. Well, thank you so much for today joining me, Elle. It's been a pleasure having you on Instagram Live with us talking about fashion and tech. Thank you so much. And for anyone who's watching, please check out CoGo and head online to LDC to find out more about what we do. And have a lovely Friday.
Thank you very much. And just one last thing, we've got a really exciting launch coming May. I forgot to mention, and my team will be very annoyed with me, that we're taking accessibility to the next level. We are launching something really exciting which allows you to track your carbon footprint via your spend as well. We've worked really hard on this to make sure that it's accessible. There's a lot of calculators out there, so watch this space for May, where we're going to add in a lot more features to help you be as sustainable as possible day to day, because our planet needs it more so than ever. So excited for that, and I'm sure we'll speak to LDC again about that. And thank you so much for having us. We love what you do, and they're one of our amazing listed businesses, so check out their profile via our app too.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to reconnect then when everything's launched. Great.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Have a nice Friday. Bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much again for tuning in. Head to our website, loanddesignclub.com, and find more LDCFM podcasts, or discover more about our independent designers online.